Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good evening, good night, etc. Wherever you are, I am. It's about 9 p.m. Where I am in Canada. Around the same time, I guess, an hour before, give or take, for you,
Same,
James.
same. It's 9 p.m. here.
Same,
Yeah.
9 p.m. there, and yeah. So I am honored on to have on my Six Elementals podcast tonight. Incredible indie author, very popular indie author, probably best known for his Malitu series. I don't want to butcher the pronunciation. It's
Oh, you
Malitu,
got
right?
it.
And
Malitu.
No Heart for Thief, etc. And he has a new release coming out, which of course going to talk about. So honored to have the awesome James Lloyd DULIN with me tonight. Hey James, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so absolutely honored. Listen, congratulations on the new release. Can you tell me? Can you tell us a bit about it? What book in the sequence of your series is this release, or is it something
No,
outside of that?
this is the third and final book of the Malitu series. So I've officially
Oh,
missed the series.
congratulations! That is a huge accomplishment. That is an amazing accomplishment. So big congratulations. How does it feel?
It feels good. I'm starting to come to terms with the fact that I've done it. Sometimes it's hard to feel it until it's out there. But a few reviews are starting to trickle in, and people are starting to say, hopefully, well, so far they've enjoyed it. So hopefully that continues.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Can you tell us a bit in general? Maybe give us a bit of a what you can do without spoilers, an overview of the
Yeah.
series, perhaps.
Yeah. So Malitu is about a recluse warrior who's hidden himself away from the rebellion he started, and he's dragged back into it when he, against his better judgment, saves a girl from a couple of Imperial soldiers. And so it's a story told in two timelines. One, this relationship between this young girl and this older, well, not too old, he's in his mid 30s, warrior, uh, learning about each other, trying to survive kind of the turmoil of a colonized country, and the him telling his past story to keep her from following in his footsteps, seeking revenge. So you kind of get that backstory and the front story as well. And at the end, they come into this nice little circle, so you get the whole view of everything.
Wow, that sounds awesome. So it sounds like there's a lot of like a mentor role, a mentor mentee role, a bit of a found family. Perhaps am I hitting the mark with some of the themes there?
Definitely. I mean, there's oh, I just saw Ganesh's
Oh,
he's commenting on a conversation we had for the release of my book, and somebody nicknamed me the finisher, which does not sound great. It everybody commented that it sounds like a porn name, so um, not too flattering. Um, but yeah, there's fan family, there's some mentor roles in there. I brought in a lot of tropes that I enjoy because I enjoy reading them, so I wanted to try out writing them. So a lot of those are in there. Uh, I really enjoyed the framing of Name of the Wind, and so that's how I thought of in this framing of this backstory along with this story kind of continuing in the present time. Uh, so I wrote a book that I wanted to read.
wow, it sounds absolutely fantastic. And yes, quick shout out to Ganesh. Thanks so much for stopping by. But hey, man, we'll take the finisher as a compliment, no matter how it, what the innuendo may be about that. Because I mean, finishing a series is something that, well, frankly, for example, I haven't finished mine, and I talked about a bit about this on quite a few podcasts with authors. In that, I think we're the situation we find ourselves. You mentioned Name of the Wind, Patrick Rothfuss. Unfortunately, there's some big name authors who haven't finished the series. Rothfuss among them. I understand from my limited understanding situation, perhaps some mental health issues there, challenges, and we should be empathetic about that as to why he hasn't finished. Of course, the big one, he who shall not be named, Mr. GRM. But when you finish a series, it's a big deal, man, and I think that can only increase your audience because they see you as someone who is a finisher and sticks to their commitment and is willing to, it's not easy to the grind sometimes to finish the series or anything that comes with that. So kudos to you, man. Congratulations. You're in that select category of authors who have a series, a full complete series under their belt.
I appreciate it. I wasn't as ambitious as you with my book count. How many books is your series going to be?
It's seven.
I mean, that's quite an ambitious series to start off with. And you're at 5?
Yeah, I'm at 5. I publish a book every year, so my commitment is to try and get a book out every year. We're working furiously on book 6, and hopefully, God willing, book 7 will be published in 2027. But when it comes to your series, what were some of the challenges in bringing it to fruition, to getting that final book out?
Yeah, the goal was to really bring together a lot of storylines that I'd left pieces of it in the first book. I've started up new storylines in the second book and making sure that it all came to a satisfying conclusion. I think there are going to be some readers that are surprised to see characters that haven't been mentioned since No Heart for a Thief come back in this series and conclusion. Because I think you'll get that in a lot of fantasy books, especially epic fantasy books. Like, where did that character go? And I wanted to have some kind of resolution for a lot of characters, and make sure that it felt like a full story. That it's just not 3 books, but it's one continuous story that feels full.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from what I understand, I'm someone who I heard about your series a long time ago. I cannot believe I haven't got to it yet. It's one of those, especially the first book, Art for a Thief, one of those books that many people in the booktube community are high on. It's got a lot of praise, a lot of critical praise. How with the success of your first book, one of the things that it's a wonderful thing, but it's also a sad thing. I find that is the realization, and it doesn't matter who you are as an author, that your first book will always be your most popular. It'll always sell the most. It'll always have the most reviews, the most ratings. Is that hard to accept as you finish up a series, knowing that no matter what, even if I sell millions of copies, No Heart for a Thief may have 1 million, but then in the terms of the series, Only a Grave Will Do might have 800,000, right? Like, is that something that is it hard to accept? Does it bother you? Is it something you just learn to live with, you think, as an author?
At the end of the day, if I sell 1 million books, I'm good. I don't know if it bothers me that much. I mean, I'm somebody who is notorious for starting series and moving on to another book. I have a lot of book 2s that I need to get back to in my own reading. So I understand it. You get into a story, you really enjoy that pace, but you want something new next, and so you jump around. It is what it is. I don't think it's always going to be the case that the first book of the series gets more attention than the last book of the series. But that is what it is. I'm not too obsessed with what readers do or don't read. My hope is that No Heart for a Thief isn't my most well-known book. That the next book that I write becomes even more well-known, and the next series that I start becomes even bigger than that. And I hope that I can continue to build a readership. So hopefully, No Heart for a Thief is a well-known milestone. Hopefully, a lot of books that I read.
Well, I think you're on your way there. Judging again by all the fantastic things I've heard about this series. Can you tell us, how did this all start? What was the inspiration for writing this series?
It started with walking my dog. So I was just kind of in my head, as I usually am, zoning out, and I really like the idea of a sin eater, somebody who consumes the sin of others and kind takes it on themselves. And I thought, what about somebody who consumes magic in that way? And so that became the idea for the thief in this book, which is a spirit thief, somebody who can take somebody else's magic. And so that was kind of the grain of sand in the oyster that became the magic system. And so it built off of that. I was working on another project that wasn't going really anywhere, and so I just kept on finding myself writing notes on this book, and oh, it would be really cool to build this in and to develop this idea, and I just kept on thinking about this world, and it became so much of a thing that, well, really the genesis of it was my first son was being born, and I knew I didn't have much time to write. I had to start, if I was ever going to do this, I had to do it now.
Yeah.
And so I just chose to switch over and focus on No Heart for a Thief, and wrote and didn't let myself edit until the whole thing was done, and it was a complete mess, but it got there. I think that was always the hardest part for me with the idea of writing a novel, was getting stuck in trying to make it perfect the first time. So that's kind of where it started. It started with the magic system, and then character built up around that. And over, I think, about 10 drafts for the first book, I think I learned how to write a decent book.
Well, I mean, it sounds like, you felt, and similar. I'll if you forgive me, I'll draw some similarities. I felt like, okay, when I was in my 50s, I felt I had more time behind that head. I was wanting to write a book, if not now, when, right? And you felt a similar pressure in that, you knew, being a young father and being very busy, that your time was going to be finite, and you might not, have the time to really finish it unless you did it then.
Yeah.
But those are, in some ways, those are pressures that we almost impose on ourselves, because, at the end of the day, I mean, it still is possible to have to write with, while you have kids, and, there's many authors who are still prolific and write many books in their 50s. But I think with all those pressures, so when you realize that you were feeling this pressure, you felt this impetus to get it done, was there then considerations about how are you going to get it done? Like, how are you going to publish? What are you going to do? Were you going to query, like, what you're going to do with how to get the book out there?
And the first step was like, can I write this? Like, publish. I had no idea what publishing was. Like, I knew that there were publishers. I didn't know how to get in front of them. I remember, like, one of my first tweets early on, because I wasn't on Twitter for a long time. I got on when I started writing a book and thought, like, let me learn a little bit from people doing this. I first tweeted at some publishing company, like, how do I send you a manuscript? And that's not how it's done, apparently. So you don't just tweet at people. I had no idea what I was doing. So it took a lot of, like, reading and watching YouTube videos and things like that. Figured out what querying was, really started trying to understand that system, started it, and then realized how much I hated querying. I sent out 30, I got back, I sent out probably 5 full the scripts on request, but it took a year to hear back from these people. And the whole time, I'm just obsessing over hearing back about somebody else telling me yes. And I couldn't stand it anymore. Like, writing wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't a release. It was pressure. It was feelings of inadequacy. It was trying to get somebody else's approval. And that was not what I was interested in doing. Like, so I decided to look into self-publishing, and I thought, even if only a few people read this, at least some people are reading it. That is the purpose of me writing it. It's not to become some famous author. We talked about Patrick Rothfuss. He finishes a debut novel and becomes one of the most well-known names in fantasy. Yeah. If I had done that, I wouldn't be able to write that third book very easily either. So it's probably better that I had some anonymity. there are a few people in the indie circle that know my name, but it's not like I have people trying to do like interviews for the Atlantic with me or anything like
Yeah.
that. And so, yeah, I tried all that, and I just ended up finding this, and I stumbled in it as well. Like I didn't know how to, uh, I didn't know how to reveal my cover, but I had a proofreader who also published articles for FanFi, Tori Gross,
Oh yeah.
and so she said she would review my cover, and that was great. And that was how I got art readers because I didn't know how the hell to get art readers. Uh, and so I just kind of stumbled my way through things. If I had been more planned out and understood things a little bit better, I would have found more success. But I came here, I did it, the books are out, so that is accomplished.
Yeah, and you know, this is something else I talk about a lot with authors, indie authors, traditional authors, that irrespective of how you do it, whether you're someone who plans everything out and does all this research beforehand and then executes, you know, along some strategic plan in terms of marketing, or you just kind of fumble your way through it. There's no wrong way. It's more about, hey, getting the book out, and obviously you clearly had what I would from the outside looking in, quite a bit of success and you know, notoriety based on the fact that you just kind of you feel like you just kind of fumble your way into it, right? So you know, maybe your way is a fantastic way of doing it, right? You went in there with no real expectations or understanding, and then, oh, this is great. Now people read my book. They're you know, they're buying it. I'm getting good reviews. People are hearing about it. Like that's a positive.
I think I don't think we do enough in most creative fields where anybody gets some kind of notoriety or attention to acknowledge that luck is a huge part of it.
Yeah,
The timing of me publishing this cover reveal in FanFi, uh,
yeah,
just getting a handful of reviewers that had the opening slot to decide to
yeah.
read my book, that a couple of people who read it really early on gave it glowing reviews. Like there are so many things that were outside of my control that ended up going well for me that created a little bit of a readership and a little bit of a runway. Uh, and I think that we do a disservice to people when we don't acknowledge how much luck and just happenstance play a role in it all. Like, if you feel that the people who made it the biggest only made it the biggest because they're the best or they had the best plan or what, maybe they had a great plan, but they also had some things work out in their favor.
Yeah, it is. It does feel sometimes very much like like lightning, catching lightning in a bottle. You know, and there's some phenomenal authors out there. We all know them that they're toiling, they're grinding, but yet their work doesn't seem to have the recognition they claim that perhaps it should. They're doing their best with marketing. They're doing all the right things, you would seem, but you know, it's not amounting to the perhaps the success that you would think that they would have. But you know, a lot of it too is, as you know, I think this writing game, especially the indie, it's a long game, right? You know, you're playing for longevity. You're playing for hopefully to have a body of work that's gonna definitely eventually break through the you know, in the hundreds and thousands of books that are coming out every day now, especially in the indie sphere and in the indie fantasy sphere specifically. You know, you're and we're and the thing about as we always talk about it as well is that we're here to boost each other and promote each other and it's not in isolation that you succeed, right? You know, like you said, there's a lot, you know, so many people that contributed to your success, and luck and timing have a lot to do that. But as I said, from the outside looking in, looks like you've done pretty well, my friend. You know,
I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. No, it's been a good experience. I published the first book just over 2.5 years ago. Um, and it's been a really cool experience getting to know people. Like this is our first time meeting, but it's really cool being able to sit down and chat with you.
oh
Um,
man,
oh, of course, and there's a shared language as well that we both have had some experience writing and figuring out what to do in this world, and so there's some kind of shared camaraderie you have with people
yes.
you've never met before. Uh, I'm lucky enough that I'm going to be able to go out to Worldcon this year.
Hey,
And
awesome.
uh, I'm just so looking forward to, like, their panels are going to be cool, and meeting some like, if I can meet a well-known author, really cool. I'm just really interested in meeting a lot of these authors that I've, exchanged some tweets with, uh, and all that. Like, sitting down, having a drink, and chatting it up. Like, that's what I'm looking forward to. Um, and so, if the entry point to that is writing a couple of books, that's not a bad way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And having gone to Worldcon for the first time in Glasgow, it's exactly what
Oh,
you say. It was just, just I spent most of my time just hanging out and meeting, people who I'd formed these relationships, these friendships with, but had never met in person. But now you get to meet them, and you just spend a lot of time. Yeah, the panels are great, like you said, and all that's fantastic. But I think, and the after parties, but I think the highlight for me was definitely meeting and getting to sit down and talk to some of these people face to face. And tentatively, we're planning to go to Seattle. I hope we make it. So I hope to get to meet you there too. So that would be awesome. But and the sense of community that especially amongst all authors and definitely certainly with the indies, I think we all look out for each other. I think we all really support each other in a way that's just simply phenomenal. I see. Hopefully, looks like Ganesh is planning to go, so hopefully I get to see you there too, my friend. But as well, I think part of the writing journey is definitely the people who kind of brought you there, even before you got to that point where you published your manuscript. The people that inspired you, the authors that you pattern yourself after potentially, the parents or spouses or friends, or who are some of the people that got you to this point to where you were writing a book and moving forward.
I mean, I would go back to, like, my writing journey started as in poetry. It did not start in, any kind of long form fiction. Um, and so I wrote for a long time, starting in college, and I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know how to sit down and actually work on something. I wrote something when inspiration struck, which is not a good way to be a writer. That's a good way to have a few things down on paper, but you'll never have anything solid. Um, and so I moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana after grad school, and it was an amazing poetry community there. Poets like Donnie Rose and Zero Skidmore. Um, I got to know them, and they taught me a lot about what it means to actually sit down and write and edit and, like, dig into a craft of something. Poetry craft is very different from fiction craft, but
Yeah.
there's still the essence of, like, you have to learn this thing and work in it and struggle through it to get good at it. And without those people in Baton Rouge that I met and helped me learn that craft, I would never have been able to do any kind of the fiction writing that I'm doing now. Um, is definitely an amazing point in my life. Um, and then there are the authors that I've loved, Patrick Rothfuss, Robin Hobb, Fonda Lee, is a much newer author to me, but she's
Yeah.
been really inspiring. And Kate Jemison, uh, Evan Winters, uh, Scott Lynch. Uh, there's so many amazing authors. The first thing that struck me about Patrick Rothfuss was he inspired me in a way to write long form fiction, because I saw him being able to write a fantasy story, which I loved, but also have it be so poetic and beautiful in its prose. And I was like, that is such an interesting marriage of these two things that I love. I want to do something like that. Uh, now, I wouldn't claim that my prose is on Office's level, um, but I definitely find ways to add that poetry and elements. Uh, of course, like, I couldn't do any of this without my family around me. Um, Amika, my wife, has helped me kind of get through some of the bad reviews or the lower times or um, the doubt that comes with putting anything out into the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's this the whole community around us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and kudos for giving shouts out to your wife, especially. I know for lots of partners that are whether they're actually part of the entrepreneurial stuff or simply the support. Not simply, but it's his nature, the support. That's awesome. It means so much, right? Um, so now that you're kind of you like you said you've like a lot of us fumbled your way into this position where you have books that's fairly well known. It's just that's fairly well known. What are some of the perhaps the tips that you would pass on to people coming in new into the indie writing game that you've learned along the way that you could share?
For people who are working on their first book, slow it down. Um, I know I felt this way. I felt I need to publish now. I need to publish soon. There's this silly idea in the back of your mind, like somebody's going to do something too similar to my book, or there's this need to get it out in the world. And there's so much that comes after publishing that has nothing to do with writing that takes a long
Yeah,
time. And if you give yourself the time to really think through things, write some more, make it, get more of the series ready. Um, give yourself some time to prep.
yeah,
You're gonna have such a better experience because it is fumbling around the dark if you don't know what you're doing.
yeah,
Um, so giving yourself some time, um, getting a good group of people around you, especially other authors who can understand and sympathize with what you're experiencing, because there are going to be low moments. There are going to be moments where you doubt yourself, where you get a bad review, and you're like, "It's all I'm the worst writer in the world."
yeah,
Um, and so you need people around you that can kind of lift you up or give you guidance. Um, so those are a couple of pieces. As far as it goes for the rest of it, I mean, I think I'm still figuring out a lot of it.
yeah,
I've only been doing this 2.5 years, and I'm still trying to figure out what does it look like to do this long term. What does it look like to have a long career doing this? Is it taking more time? Is it trying to get out as much as I can as soon as I can? Because there's big pressure to publish so much as an indie author. You're doing one book a year. It's a lot.
yeah.
And if you take a break, uh, God forbid you have a vacation or something. Um, what happens to your writing efficiency?
Yeah.
It gets to be a lot, and so giving yourself some space. I wish I could take my own advice on that.
Well, those some that's some excellent advice. I think we should all pay heed to that. I quick want to give a shout out to the awesome Shad Zaman. What's up, buddy? Thanks for coming out. Great supporter of the community, friend of the channel. So thanks for coming out to support James and say hi. And always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. So I want to circle back to the series and the writing.
Yeah.
And again, congratulations that it is to me it's a very popular series and kind of more and more well known. What do you attribute that? Why do you think people love your series that they love Malitu? What do you think the draw is?
Um, I'm speaking from reviews and conversations I've had. It's the characters. I think that I've spent a lot of time trying to make these characters very authentic and feel human. Um, putting a lot of myself into there, putting a lot of care into making sure that they drive the plot and that the plot drives them. Um, and so I think there's something about the characters that I managed to lasso in these books that have stuck with some people.
Yeah,
Um, and so I think that has helped a lot. Um, you know, I find my books either hit or miss with a lot of people. If people are not in there for the characters in the longer journey and they want something more plot forward, they're gonna, it's not gonna be for them. But if they're there and willing to give it a chance and kind of sink under their skin, I think it really hits them hard. Um, so yeah, I think it's all the characters. It's all making room for that to happen. Uh, I don't know. At first, I remember reading my first draft and going, I don't think these characters are anything different from one another. They're just names on a page that say words that are a little different. Um, and eventually they became much more fledged out. Um, but it took a lot of epiphanies of like trying to figure out what is this actual character motivation. Maybe it comes back to I grew up in the theater. My dad was the managing director of a community theater. That was his job, and so I grew up going to plays from a very young age, working backstage, doing lights, doing sound. And so story has been a really big part of my life. And I've seen people give characters a lot of life and a lot of heart. And I've seen actors just fall flat on their face, not knowing how to do that. And so maybe some of that sunk in. I am not an actor by any means, but maybe I can uh, direct fictional people into the right places.
Yeah. Well, and that's an excellent answer. One thing, a common theme thread that I've heard from people who've read your work and people I trust and respect is that it's going to absolutely break you emotionally. That you're going to be crying. There's maybe crying through several chapters. That it's just so heart wrenching in places. Like that's a skill, and that's a skill I admire in an author. That the way they write so emotive that it brings out those emotions in the reader. Why do you think that that's clearly a skill that you have? How have you been able to do that? Do you think in your work?
I follow the game plan of Robin Hobb, and I torture my characters. um, I don't. It's a very huge compliment. I take it as such. Like Chris from the fictional escapist told me that he's only cried for two books, and one of them was no only a grave will do. Which is just such a huge compliment. Uh, from the literary apothecary, uh, just like took a picture of her crying face and posted it online after she did. Uh, so I mean, in a way, it kind of feels sadistic to take happiness in their
Yeah.
sadness, but um, I I don't know. I don't know what the skill is precisely. I think that there's uh, if you are able to really build out a character and make people fall in love with them, and then you let them kind of have their flaws and fall where they need to fall, that can cause a lot of dramatic tension. Um, I think if you, one of the big things, looking at it and kind of dissecting it is probably taking a character's greatest flaw and having their arc be about the challenges of overcoming that and the fault and the follies along the way. And then if they do finally get there, have and having that not be something that just comes so easily. Like let that pressure of having that character growth break them in some ways and break their readers. Um, Let them feel the pain of what growth is. Um, Maybe that's something. But yeah, I don't know if I've analyzed it enough. I also will find myself tearing up reading my books sometimes because I these characters are real in my mind. Like I spent so much time with them, so seeing the trauma that I put them through can be sad.
But what I think you said so eloquently. I think with character payoffs, I agree. They have to feel earned. It can't be cheap. It has to feel earned. I think, to get the emotion out of your readers, and clearly you're able to do that. But in saying all that, is it now difficult? And I'm not sure if you plan to write more prequels or sequels, or revisit these characters in the future. But is it tough then, now that you've written Only Grave Will Do, and now the series is finished, to and I'm not sure if you have plans again, but to leave some of these characters behind?
It is. I don't plan to return to these characters in any significant way. There's a potential plan for coming back to the world, and maybe there would be side characters in that story. Um, Really side characters. Um,
Yeah.
but there is a bit of grief that comes with letting go of these characters, and um, you know, I have I have lived with Kalo and Tan in my head for over 6 years now,
Yeah.
writing and just and even the process of just thinking about them and taking notes and thinking about what their story could be, and then coming to the conclusion has taken a long time, and it is hard to say goodbye. It's hard to think about the next characters I write will have nothing to do with this story, nothing to do with this world, because I want to explore different worlds and different themes. But yeah, it's a little difficult to move on.
Now, you may not be able to divulge, and maybe understand if you can't. But so now you've finished series, your first series, and again, huge congratulations! It's a big accomplishment. What's next, do you think, for your writing? Do you have other things in the works that you can discuss, or perhaps you can't really elaborate much on them? But what can we expect next from you?
So there are a few things. I've written a novelette that I'm trying to figure out what to do with. That's set in a completely different world, and that might lead to more stories in that world, which I think is kind of like I would say pragmatic to the point of almost evil Jedi kind of thing going on. And so I'm working on that a little bit, and then I have this new series that I want to work on. That's world is very much inspired by Arcane. I love that series so much, and so I wanted to do something in that realm that has that kind of energetic feeling to it. That plot that moves, but is also has really deep characters, really deep struggle. Has these moments of levity that really crash down into really hard moments, and do something in that realm. Um, so that's something I'm gonna start working on very soon. Um, that the plan for that is for a 5 book series that you know Malitu is a lot more contained of a story. It's a very intimate story with only a handful of characters, and really, the most important characters are very few and far between, and it's very concentrated on their experience in this world. Whereas this next series I want to write, it's going to be gods and nations colliding and wars and big epic stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get into that and see what that looks like.
Oh, that sounds exciting, man. Sounds like you got a lot of great stuff in the hopper being planned. So that's awesome. I quickly do want to circle back though to Only Grave Will Do, and I know again it's the last book of a series. It's hard to not be spoilery, but can you give us a bit of a snapshot into what this book specifically is about and its place in the series and the kind of things that it's going to be exploring?
Yeah, I mean, No Hunger Thief sets up these characters where Kalo is he's lived in the middle of the woods, abandoned his rebellion for about 12 years, and he's dragged back into it. Only a grave will do. And the story he's telling is really he's trying to tell a story where he thinks he's made all the mistakes in the world and that he's no good for anybody around him. He really he's down on himself. He believes he's almost toxic to the people around him. Only a grave will do is him coming to terms with his past and trying to move forward with the future. Really coming to understand the mistakes he made with rebellion, and how to do that better. Um, and that backstory comes to a place where you understand why he's hidden himself away. What has he done that he believes is so terrible that he's cast himself out? And then Anne is this character in book one where uh, she's just lost her family in a really traumatic way, and she is hell bent on revenge because she thinks she has to. It's more of a survivor's guilt thing. She believes that she owes the people that died something, and she thinks that's revenge. And this journey of her anger and what it means to be angry and what it means to actually do something for the people that have died, whether that's blood or that's actual change, and her coming to grips with that, and at such a young age, trying to understand what she can do and what her role can be. So it's a lot of coming to terms with oneself.
Wow, sounds absolutely phenomenal. Like I really travesty. I haven't got this yet. Like so many books that I really need to get to. I really need to get to this series because it sounds absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, once again, kudos and congratulations on the release. Just it came out in June. Is that correct?
Yeah, June 24th. So it's about a week old at this point. Yeah.
And still very the feeling I'm sure is very fresh. You're still kind of I'm sure you've been absorbing the fact that you're actually finished.
Yeah, still absorbing it. Trying to. I'm not somebody who necessarily understands how to feel about a significant moment in the moment. Like sometimes I need a few months before I'm like reconciling my feelings on something like that. So we'll see. Maybe in a few months I'll just be uh, just unable to get out of bed with grief or something. But no, it's all good. Uh, but yeah, it's exciting to get that out in the world. There's still some things like getting my bookshop on my shop up and running with all my copies, and so there's still some logistics of the release that are still happening behind the curtains. Uh, but yeah, it's good that it's out in the world. I'm excited to see people starting to post about their experiences with it.
That's amazing. And again, so happy for you. I mean, again, it is a really big accomplishment. And, only those who have written and completed the series, I think, understand, just how big accomplishment, it is. So once again, congratulations. Can you tell us a bit about, you're again, I said you're a popular author. You have some notoriety with your series out there. Can you talk about some of the other authors, that especially that you really not so much. We talked about your inspirations, the ones you've read, since you began your author journey that really, inspire you. Indie authors, traditional authors, authors that you really love their stuff. So you want to kind of wreck and shout out their work.
I mean, so uh, I'm bringing this one up because the new one's coming out in like 2 weeks. So Moses Jose Tomo. Um, I got to meet him when I was doing a podcast, which is since cut off. Um, and he was just a really cool person to interview, and I loved his book. So the first one it's told in much more of a fable style, and so it's a lot more distant POV, and you're kind of you feel like the story has been around for a long time. And the second book takes place like 500 years later, and is much more embedded POV. Like you're very close into it, and it deals with a world where the fable of the first book has influenced so much of the lore of the second book. So it's almost like that book lives in another book. It's a very cool feeling of tension there. And so I'm excited to read the conclusion that comes out. They're like 100 pages each. Um, but the conclusion comes out this month, the 15th. So he's an author that I've really enjoyed connecting with, and Tatiana Obey,
Yeah,
an amazing Sister Samurai.
yeah, great book. I read that. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to read the new one because that also just came out in June, and so I got to get to that. Um, Crystal Matar.
Oh yes.
So I still haven't gotten to her second book because they are
Oh,
big
it's
enough to
awesome.
be a brick in a building. Uh,
Yeah. It's awesome. I
yeah,
can say
it
that.
is.
Yeah,
I
it's
need to
awesome.
get. And speaking of, you have a lot of heavy hitters in the indie Canadian market. Uh, I keep on meeting people and they're from Canada. So I don't know what you've got going on over there, but you've got a lot of heavy hitters there. Uh, the first few that are coming to mind, I, right now my favorite series is the Greenbone Saga, and I didn't read
Yes.
that until last summer. And I just devoured it. It was so good. Uh, it taught me so much about character and clarified some things on character for me. Um, very light spoilers. Hilo is a character in the first book who is this kind of he serves as the right hand to the leader of this clan. It's a gang in some ways, political body in other ways, and um, he is in charge of all the. He's the enforcement arm of the clan, and he's misogynistic. He's homophobic.
Yeah.
He's very thick-headed. He embodies a lot of. He wants to fight first and think and talk later. He embodies a lot of these stereotypical things that you'd think about somebody who's in charge of the forces or a clan. Uh, but part of him is his belief that family is the most important thing in the world. And then you read book three, which spans like 50 years, and you
Yeah.
get to see him late in life.
Yeah.
And that ember of family is the most important thing in the world has gone nowhere. It's
Yeah.
still the center of him. And everything that has developed around him, his changes and views around women have been because of his belief in family. His changes in his views about fighting first and thinking later have been about
Yeah.
his family. Everything has been that reason coming back to family, and it made me think that it made me think about how the characters that I write also have a seed of an idea in the middle of them. That their character arcs or their growth or changes in who they are all have to rotate around that single idea of who this person is that will never change. Um, and so just reading her characters and seeing how well she adapted like through them over 50 years um, helped me see a lot about what I think writing good characters is. Um, but I'm missing the names of a lot of authors, I'm sure. Oh, Timothy Wolf.
Oh yes. Awesome, Jed.
What is that? The voice, the silence of gods, or something?
Yeah, the whisper that replaced God is.
Yes. Um, that was an excellent novella. Uh, yeah, there's just so many people doing amazing things out
Yeah. No, I agree. And you mentioned some of my faves, and Greenville Saga is absolutely fantastic. I mean, just a phenomenal series, and yeah, I absolutely concur with you with the character development. Yeah, Crystal Matar. Like you mentioned a lot of my personal faves. So yeah, it's and it's just like it says travesty. I can't get to more sooner, right? With everything that's going on. Just quickly, but you did mention that you had. It seems like you had a YouTube channel and you're doing interviews, and but it sounds like you stopped doing them. Can I ask? Do you mind if I ask why or what? What was how that started and what happened with
there.
that?
You remember the fantasyreview.com?
Yeah,
For like 5 minutes, and it was gone. Like it was a big flash in the pan, and then kind of fizzled out with some issues. Um, the the founder of that website reached out to me 2 months after I started my first book, published my first book, and asked me to co-host a podcast that would be under the umbrella of the Fantasy Review. And so I was put together with Nathan Kambara, who helped put together the speculative fiction, Sphinx competition, the novella
Yes.
competition.
Yes.
So Nathan and I started a podcast on the Fantasy Review, where we got some. Like, it was really cool because the Fantasy Review started getting a lot of views very quickly, and so publishers started sending me arcs. And I was just like, what the hell is this? I was confused. It made no sense to me. Like, this was an arc I got in the mail.
Wow.
And so it was very cool to start to get these books and read these authors and then interview them. Eventually, we detached from the Fantasy Review in the Dragonfire podcast. We had a lot of fun doing it, but our goal was everybody we interview, we have read at least one book.
Yeah.
And that just became unmanageable.
Yeah.
And it became more work eventually than it was fun and enjoyable. And so we took a hiatus. We came back for a few months, and then we took a never-ending hiatus. So it was never anything like Nathan and I are still cool. I really like. He's a really amazing person, and I appreciate him as a reviewer and person. I had a lot of fun doing it. I just did not have neither did he. And so it just kind of went the way of the dinosaurs. It just left.
Yeah, and I completely understand how that stuff happens. It's a shame I have to, I was hoping to actually go back and watch some of your stuff because I'm sure you guys were awesome. But yeah, and that's just part of life. I think that's just part of what happens as a busy person and especially as a busy author. And sometimes you take on side projects and you do different things, and sometimes they fly for a long time, and sometimes they don't. But I think I'm sure you enjoyed it, like you said, when you're doing it. I'm sure you learned a lot. You got to meet a lot of cool people, and that's But I totally understand about that, and that pressure too. Same thing. I felt myself. It's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I haven't read James' book, but yet I'm bringing him on my show, and that's like the rare exception that I haven't read. If it's an author's book, and I think one thing I always planned to do this was also feature bloggers and reviewers of podcasts, but that kind of alleviates the pressure a bit too when you have a blogger coming on and you haven't, they're not necessarily an author, but but I totally get it, man. Well, kudos to you for starting it, and kudos to you for for that endeavor, and I'm sure it was fantastic while it was running. So
Yeah, I've always thought about going back and doing something because I enjoyed it. I also just don't know when I'd do it. You my life is one part work, two parts kids, and the half part writing in there somewhere. And so it just ends up being, it's just something I can't sustain at this time. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking to people, giving people platforms. We were able to do a couple of really cool panels. And then, like, I'm serious, it was really fun meeting people like Moses. He's a very cool guy and had a lot of interesting things to say about what fantasy can be. Because probably over intellectualize a lot of things, but I enjoy kind of thinking about the impact that fantasy can have and what it can mean to people, and what an author's role in that is, and and the ideas of theme and how that plays into storytelling, and the importance of theme, and how what is escapism versus what is something that is contributing to a conversation. And I love talking about that stuff, so it was a cool venue to do that.
Well, again, it sounded amazing, and I hope I get to somehow maybe your archive stuff get a boo at some of that stuff. I want to quickly put up just a comment from Ganesh saying, "Yep, he agrees. Greenbow. He's a Greenbow Saga fan, obviously. So yeah, fantastic series." And WGK 32GK put up, "Hey, what's up? Thanks for coming out and checking out the channel and checking out James." So James, I know you got a lot going on. I could talk to you for hours. I want to respect your time. I know you got some stuff coming up that you gotta get some sleep for.
Yes.
But I do want to give you an opportunity, just as we're winding down, just to let everybody know where they can find you on social media. Where they can buy your books. Your social media links and things such as that.
Yeah, and first thing, join the newsletter. I send out an email maybe once a month. You can join on jamesldulin.com and find the newsletter link there. I like to keep my readers abreast of what's going on, what the plan is, and share some news there. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'll throw up a TikTok every once in a while. Instagram is probably a little less active, but I try to be active and out there. If you ever are interested in reading Malitu, you can find it. All the ebooks are on Amazon. Everything else is pretty wide, so you can find it on Barnes & Noble, Bookshop,
Yeah.
Amazon, anywhere you can find most books online. You can find Malitu. You can also find signed editions on my website. And the Broken Binding has some signed editions, so you can look there if you're in Europe.
That is awesome. That's fantastic. Well, once again, like I said, I'm just so honored that you come on the show. Thanks for doing that. I know you're probably beat, and like I said, you got a lot going on, and you got to run off. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy evening to hang out with me and chat about your books and stuff. Certainly, for a
It was
while.
a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun chatting. People watching, but it's also just fun chatting.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely awesome. Thank you. Quickly, PL Stewart here on 6 Elemental Interviews. The website's plstewart.com. That's where you get the books. The John Kingdom Saga, 5 books out now. Pack Wolves just came out. The 5th book, 6th book, A Black Dragon, I read expected in the spring of 2026. I'm an assistant editor with Before Go blog, led by the wonderful Beth Tabler. Shout out to Beth Tabler and all the Before Go blog crew. You can only find me on YouTube here, my channel, The John Kingdom Saga. Also, beside my esteemed colleague Taylor from Between the Pages, check out her channel. She's an amazing blogger. So it's a very, very similar series, page showing where we interview fabulous creatives such as James in the community. So everyone, thank you so much to everyone that came out and came to hang out in the chat. And everyone who's going to watch the live. You're what makes this type of long form content just awesome. So we really appreciate you. So once again, it was a privilege to have the amazing author James LLYOD out. Check out his series. Congratulations on the recent release of Only Grave Will Do. Yep, folks, if you're interested for some compelling fantasy, check out Malitu. Great series, very highly regarded, and I'm sure you'll find something to like there. So James and I will be signing off, and take care, everyone. Bye-bye now.